Hi, I'm Luke. Today on Out of Darts, it's been 9 months, but I finally got my hands on the Payara. I have been privileged to watch this hobby grow over the last 5 years, and Drac starting a Nerf shop was a very logical step for him. I bought this Payara blaster on Drac's website, Next Level Nerf, about 9 months ago. He's since rebranded to Foam Pro Shop, so you can find them over at foamproshop.com. This is his original blaster. It is a Bullpup solenoid-driven flywheel blaster, and it's got some really great features, and it's kind of a nice looking mini package. I do have some complaints and some design critiques, so that's what we're here for today. Full disclosure, I paid full price for this blaster. It was $400. It came assembled, so I did not do the wiring. Drac and I are, of course, friends, colleagues, and competitors all at the same time, so I always think it's fun to see what other people are doing, and I love spotlighting other creators, even if they're bigger than me. I'm going to start with some of my favorite features of this. This is the tiniest little Bullpup blaster I've ever seen. It is just itty bitty and fun to play with, and it really has a nice compact feel. I think it's going to be really great for close quarters battles and running around. I don't really see running it as a primary in a outdoor battle, for instance, because I'd probably want something with a little bit longer of a stock, or at least a longer blaster overall. That said, if I really got into that, I could certainly design a longer stock with maybe some more curve to go with it to hold my form. Drac chose these colors for me. They are pretty close to other colors that I love, and I think it looks really, really slick. It's sort of a turquoise blue with, of course, orange accents and sort of a galaxy black-like sparkle black here. I don't think it's actually galaxy black because I do have that over here, so I think it's something by Filamentum, as that's one of the key brands he uses. Inside are his Howler wheels, which are based on the Daybreak geometry, so it does get quite good performance. We'll put that up on the screen now, the chronograph numbers. Aesthetically, I really like the look of the blaster. I think these sort of teeth here are a nice play on the fish motif. I think, the Picatinny is nicely styled up top with a dish out of the center as far as the design itself. It's got a very minimalist form factor, which I very much enjoy, though I will say I'm not that huge of a fan of thumbhole stocks in general, just for comfort reasons, but they are, pretty much unavoidable if you're going to build a Bullpup. At least in any standard configuration. The only way I think to make it more comfortable would be to make a larger blaster, and I do not think that was the objective of this blaster. There are not a lot of Bullpups out there, so when Drac first listed this, I thought I had to jump on it and see what he was up to. It doesn't sound like these are going to be available for general sale, but he might do a few here and there as a special order or just one-offs when he feels like it. So keep that in mind. This isn't a readily available product, which is kind of all the more novelty of having one myself. I really like seeing what other designers do, how they approach assembly and design, and how they put their components together. And this one's a very interesting blaster on that note. And that's where we're going to get into some of my sort of critique of the blaster. This is Drac's first blaster, so I don't even think my first blaster would remotely compare to this, but certainly the first one we sold, which is Jupiter, would have a similar level of polish. That said, Jupiter is now about 3 years old, so the design is not as polished as our current capabilities could allow it to be. But some of the things I'm noticing kind of right off the bat, ergonomically, I have to be really careful not to hit the firing trigger when I pull down the rev. The way that my fingers tend to fall, I keep hitting this little nub here. For me personally, I'd probably need to adjust this a little bit, just shorten that trigger, and that's probably just personal preference as far as sizing of hands, but I know Drac's got pretty large hands, so I would think it would be the same for him. But for me, I have to be a little careful. I also find that because this is all exposed up front, it's very easy to have this hanging and activate on your body or on your clothing or your tactical gear. So something to keep in mind when you're playing with a blaster like this. I think I probably, if I were going to use this for extended period of time and throw it on a sling point, possibly right up here, I would probably look at adding a switch for a master on-off just to be able to toggle it on and off. I also might consider adding some smart controls to this. We are working on a board that I think could go in this very easily, and I think that's something we'll play with in the future. There are a number of sort of oddball tolerance things. I can see air all the way through this center line and this vertical line. This gap here seems a little large, and I can see through into the battery compartment on both sides, or rather into the solenoid area, which is moved by this opened here. It levers open. I'll open it here, but then the other thing there is it seems like this hole is off center. So for whatever reason, this screw is not straight. This screw's a little tight to get out, but this is not your battery compartment. Your battery compartment's back here. You've got a single screw, which is nice and easy, and then a nice little design here where that comes off, this slides up, and you've got easy access to your battery. And I think that's a very simple way to put it together. It's nicely balanced because it sits back nice and low at the rear of the blaster. I think that's fabulous. It definitely helps with the overall balance and feel. And while back here we've got plenty of room to actually screw this thumb screw in, this one up here is quite difficult to actually reach. Now, this is more about servicing your blaster or getting access to the solenoid, and it's part of the assembly, but this screw does seem to be off tolerance. I think I would maybe look to reprint this and scoot that hole forward so it lines up with the brass insert below. I'm not exaggerating the struggle to get this out. It's a little tight, I think, because of the angle. I believe this is going into a threaded insert as well. I'm just going to try to do this without getting a tool out. Got to show you the insides. But overall, I mean, this thumb screw shouldn't be this tight. There should be no reason for it to be this difficult to get out. So I think it's just probably a tolerance issue or a design tweak. Oh, and I forgot I also have to take the battery off because they're kind of a unique little hinge mechanism here. So this opens up and you can see the solenoid inside with a 3D printed pusher, and you can kind of see how everything works in there. Now, some other odd choices inside I see is that we've got brass inserts up here that aren't actually attached to plastic. Given that this plate here was printed on the bed like this, there's no reason that we couldn't just mound up some plastic around there in the design. It would take no more time to print and it would give those a lot more purchase. I would be careful about putting anything too heavy, but it'll probably hold just fine. I have seen those inserts rip out if they are not connected to plastic all the way, because they are designed to take, the first portion here doesn't have nearly as much holding power as those two lips. The two bottom barb lips have the majority of the actual holding power. And we've done a series of different tests to get the exact fit and dimensions for these holes because we're using them extensively in upcoming products. And we wanted to maximize the amount of force that could go on those. So I think if I were to change this personally, I'd probably add some plastic there just so those sit more firmly. It looks like this part was probably adjusted. It's not maybe a final production part. And now I definitely can see where the alignment for that pin, that brass insert that's inside here holding this, is definitely further forward than the actual hole. So it's kind of coming in at a bit of an angle, making it a little funky. And again, this gap here I think could be reduced substantially. There's no reason for it to be 2 millimeters. I think it could be quite a bit less. And overall, there's just maybe a few more gaps than I would expect on a blaster at this price point, but this is their very first initial offering, so I think it's a pretty good first off blaster. It's certainly more polished than anything I did as my first. And it's kind of a quirky, fun assembly. I like the minimalist design. I like the flywheels kind of jutting out to the sides here. It makes it so you've basically made this blaster as compact and tiny as possible. And speaking of, again, activating that trigger, it's really easy because of just how you would hold the blaster. It's difficult to hold the blaster without accidentally revving it due to the back weight and everything. But it feels very nice. I'm gonna have a blast playing with this inside. I hope we get to go back to the Airsoft indoor arena in Oregon and play with this, because I think it's gonna make a killer blaster for those really close quarter battles, and should be a lot of fun. Up front, we've got a worker metal barrel here to help with accuracy, and in my initial testing here, it's been very accurate. It looks like a very pinpoint blaster as far as flywheel setups go, so I'm very happy with the performance overall there. My final big complaint is the Magwell, and Drac, I'm sorry, I don't know what is going on here, but this Magwell, you might have heard it earlier. Here's a standard Talon mag. It rattles in every direction, and I can't figure out why. I've tested every type of mag. It wobbles forwards, backwards, side to side. Not only forwards, backwards, side to side, but it has, I'd say 8 millimeters of play up and down, maybe 6. And I'm not too sure what's going on there. I also have another magazine, which I'm not going to show on camera here, that seems to be incompatible altogether, despite working with every other Talon mag. We'll have a little more on that later. But it's just something that seems a little bit off. I'm definitely going to do something to tighten up this tolerance, because it seems like there's both a little too much play left to right, front to back, and up and down once it's actually locked in place. I just don't know quite why that is. You know, if I take that same magazine here and put it in my Hummingbird, the mag release holds fine. If I grab that magazine and throw it in a Talon Claw, of course it's, just fine, not making, there's a tiny bit more slop there, but this has got a shorter vertical magwell anyway, so, but it's really solid. And this one, it's worth noting, won't drop out freely, but the Hummingbird will, while still being tight. It's tight and will drop freely. So it seems like some tolerances here could be fixed. I know this is initial offering, and it's the very first. I know this is the initial offering for the product, and it's the very first release, maybe the only release. I suspect Drac has learned some of the same lessons with pre-orders that we have learned, and that is basically we don't offer them. Pre-orders are a real challenge when it comes to running the business. For me personally, we don't offer them anymore, and one of the reasons is this exact problem where you release a product, people are really excited about it, and then you deliver it fairly late, and people kind of lose interest, lose excitement, and you lose passion for wanting to work on the product. We didn't take pre-orders for the Proton Pack, and we are finally getting that out, but that's kind of a similar thing. I'm glad I didn't take pre-orders because there were a lot of hurdles that we ran into as we reached production and printing and actually getting them out in the wild. So I think this is probably something that he won't do again as far as a pre-order. I would expect next time he's selling blasters, they'll probably just be available as he's got them. You just can't hold it anywhere without, that's really not that big of a problem. You just need to be aware of it, the rev trigger. It's just because it's pronounced, it's on the front of the blaster, it's really easy to hit if you're just trying to hold on to it to show it off. But this is not normal use. You can practice good fire control, keep those fingers out there. The battery compartment is a nice size. It can hold up to, I would say, about a 1500 milliamp pack, but right now I've got a 950 graphene because ultimately, if you're not going to be shooting a ton of shots, I'd rather go with a lighter weight. Another sort of interesting quirk on the wiring, and I don't think I would wire this way, but this is wired so that the solenoid will always go even if you haven't revved. And that to me is probably setting yourself up for trouble, because if I were to just pop this in and not have good fire control, I've loaded one. Oh, now I've probably jammed it. Yeah, so I think personally I would wire that so that you've got current running through the main rev switch first, and then the firing switch can't activate unless the rev is already activated. That way you're not risking clearing things. But that's ultimately just a personal preference, and it's just a simple wiring change. It wouldn't be a big deal to actually get in there and do that, I expect, unless I'm not understanding the wire paths inside of here, but I think that would be pretty easy to do. I've certainly done both with a variety of different blasters. One interesting design choice is that the Payara logo is only on the screw side, quote unquote, which this is symmetrical blaster in virtually every way, except the Payara logo is only on the side that a right-handed person would put to their body. I probably would have put it on both sides, but maybe Drac's got a reason for not wanting it on the left side. Maybe it's just to make this side more subtle and less name flashing. I mean, we all either love, hate, or don't like this thing, you know, so maybe they're trying to avoid logo heavy outside and keep it cleaner. I'd love to hear from Drac what the actual idea was there. Another thing that I noticed and Drac warned me about is that the hardware does seem to be a variety of different hardware. I think there's both metric of multiple sizes, and you got Phillips screw back here, and then pretty sure that's a US standard screw there with a larger, I don't know if that's a quarter inch screw, but it seems like it's not a very unified hardware setup. I would expect that if he decides to produce these in a larger scale instead of just a one-off batch, he'll probably look at getting the hardware to all match. When we design a blaster, we like to have the same tool. If it's a hex driver, we like it to open everything on the entire blaster unless there's absolutely no way to accommodate for it, because if you don't, it just makes it way more inconvenient to field service and strip the blaster. Overall, I think the Payara is a really tremendous first offering from Drac. I love seeing something new. Everybody else is doing short flywheel blasters, little mini, you know, grip, magazine in grip blasters, and there hasn't been a lot of variation. The Bulwark is the only other flywheeler I've known recently, but due to the Bulwark's interesting assembly and feed mechanism with the magazine being horizontal, it's not the most accurate, where I think this really excels when compared to the Bulwark. I think I'm gonna have to do a Bulwark next because I'd love to compare the two in a future video, and the Bulwark just looks amazing too, so I think it's a worthy opponent. I'd love to hear from you in the comments what you think about the Payara. I think it's one cool fish, and I always love seeing something new. Would you like to see him make more of them? I know that's one of the big requests he's probably going to get in general as these start getting out in the wild, but it seems like he's pretty busy with all of the other designs at this time. Let me know in the comments, and until next time, I'm out of darts. And I feel like they set people up for disappointment. In this case,